Welcome to the Trip Sitting Podcast. This next episode is with Amrit Singh, and he is a life coach, and we talk about his spiritual journey from growing up in Germany to moving to India, now living in Mexico, and how he started with meditation at a pretty early age and how that's helped him just achieve a level of happiness and love that he aims to bring to other people through being a life coach. And we had a really great conversation that I think everybody is going to be able to get a lot of really great tips out of. So I hope you enjoy. Kind of starting from the beginning, what started you on your spiritual path?
Really, what I would say what started me on my spiritual path was smoking weed. Because it opened up my mind to these new realms where I was just thinking like, oh my God, that's what I want. But why do I feel so stoned? So that was the issue. And so I got to the point, when I started to learn about yoga and meditation, I achieved similar experiences and I wasn't stoned. And so that was an interesting new, was an interesting new place to come to and experience to have. Yeah.
When you kind of describe it as feeling stoned, what were those feelings that you had at that point that was so different than before you had ever smoked weed before?
Well, I can very easily tell the difference between being high and being stoned, So I realized one of the things which I liked about marijuana was that it allowed you to go high. Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest issues everybody who uses it has is that they say, oh my God, this is so amazing. I feel so great. I want more. And then the opposite happens. You start going low and you just sit there like a potato watching Netflix and eating chips. Because, that's really all there's left, right? So, for me, the inspiration comes out of this very, very small microdose, which allows your mind to expand. And I thought that was a very cool thing. And that's what I learned from the weed.
Yeah. And so when you talk about expanding your mind, what does that allow you to do?
Well, for me, I realize it's almost this, I'm a very logical, mental person. Math was always easy in school. Mm-hmm. And so for me to connect to that creative side of myself and being able to draw, being able to write, being able to sing or dance and just be very expanded and really feeling this, when these two halves of the brain kind of rebalance themselves, and it takes me back to being much more authentic and much more real. And I enjoyed that about it. I thought it was really special.
Did you ever, get to a point where you really felt off balance, like your left brain was taking over and that you needed to do this shift? Or was it something that just gradually happened?
That's a good question. I think it's, for any left brain person, I don't think really they feel off balance with it because that's their life, right? I mean, you're good at math, numbers make sense, logical shit makes sense in a row, and you can get stuff done, and who cares how you feel about it, right? So that's the, I think to really come to the point of balance, you need to come to a point where you say, hey, I know there's another side. It seems like I'm only living half my life here and only getting 50% of the experience. I want something more. I want more of the whole rather than just, getting stuff done. And so, I think that's why, when my drug experiences also helped me with that, because it kind of it allowed my regular way of thinking to be questioned. And to say, hey, there could be something else. And then when I started meditating, those pieces came together because I already knew there's something else. And I already knew I didn't want to travel the path through the drugs. And so I chose to practice it through meditation, which actually was much more challenging because, you need much more commitment, you need to sit much longer. And just smoking a joint is much easier and quicker. But, the trade-off, right?
Yeah. Did you ever, I guess, have you ever tried any other different types of plant medicine, or have you just worked with marijuana?
I've tried mushrooms before, and I think those are also super interesting. I think it's very different because it's not, it's a very different approach.
Yeah.
But what I liked about the mushrooms was really this connecting it with an intention, and then realizing how powerful our intentions are when they express themselves with a plant medicine as part of the experience. And then some real interesting stuff happens.
Yeah, the first time that I ever, I guess, started using marijuana, it never connected with me. I would always just get stoned essentially and never truly feel like that high feeling where I was comfortable and I knew where it was. And I think a lot of that had to do with the people that I was with, and we're using it for the purpose of like getting high and basically just doing nothing.
Ending up being stoned.
yeah, exactly. And so that just kind of creates that environment where that's going to happen. And then I'd be so in my head and just thinking about so much, over and over and over again, like just these thought patterns that were emerging. And it was never very pleasant, to be honest. It was always like, I think I'm doing this wrong. Like, cause everyone else seems like they're having a fine time. Yeah, exactly. So like, I think I'm doing
this
something.
It's a very common thing because this happens to people with an extremely high level of sensitivity. All the other guys are just going like, oh, whatever, nothing happened. I had a couple of beers with it. And but when you come in and you have this really high level of vibration and sensitivity and you take too much, it hits you over your head so hard. Like one of the things, for example, in the practice I'm doing in Kundalini Yoga is that we actually have a general rule against mixing drugs and meditation. And the reason that is because when you meditate deeply, you bring yourself really high, you open yourself up, you open your energetic channels. And this is something what probably happened to you when you were younger and you smoked weed. You were already at that point. Yeah. And then you get the drug hitting you there. It completely knocks you off balance. If you're, been drinking alcohol for 35 years and, you don't feel much anyway, that one joint won't make a difference.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. Well, what's interesting too is, so that was my experience with marijuana. Then on the flip side, once I started using psychedelics, then it was the opposite experience where it was me kind of reaching that higher plane and being able to, I guess, step back and step into kind of, my conscious and just be an observer of it without getting caught up. Whereas with marijuana, I'd be getting caught up in the thoughts. Whereas with the plant medicine, it showed me you don't have to get caught up in this. You can just sit here and feel it and see it go by and just kind of be that casual observer. And then it was only after that I was able to then understand kind of what meditation felt like. Like it almost felt like a meditative experience.
Oh,
and now
it's been,
and now I'm trying to use meditation on a daily basis to experience that. I'm not quite there yet, but you were right in saying that meditation, that's a commitment, and that's something that you have to really try hard. Whereas when you take any sort of plant medicine, it's, you kind of have no choice. This is just going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what type of yoga was it that you said that you practice?
I practice Kundalini Yoga. And Kundalini Yoga, I don't know how much you know about it, but I can just give a quick explanation for our listeners. It's a very intense type of yoga. It has a lot to do with how to use the breath, and we have a lot of dynamic movements. It's all really designed to be practiced by beginners, which is very cool about it, which I always like because you could just share it with people who didn't need 10 years of yoga practice and a vegan diet to be even able to sit down, right?
Yeah.
So it's called the yoga of awareness. So it's all about really getting aware of where you're at with your body, what's going on in your mind, what's going on emotionally. And then from there, to balance out the chakras. And as soon as that happens, then you sit down to meditate, and then your meditation becomes deep. Because, as you know, if you practice meditation, there's many different levels, and there is the one where you can get really deep, and that's the one which doesn't happen so often.
Yeah.
But then that's why we call it practicing meditation, and we don't call it doing meditation.
I like that.
It's like that.
Yeah, it's
a continual effort.
So how long ago did you start this, I guess?
I started, I think, almost 30 years ago now. I think I was 18, 19, 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Was it a teacher that got you to start doing it, or you just did it yourself?
It was actually a friend of mine who was seeing this Ayurvedic doctor, and this Ayurvedic doctor was practicing some yoga, and the friend said, hey, why don't you organize a class for all of us? And so we managed, and we ended up going with 20 people with a whole, stoner friend group. It was a pretty funny experience. And it was only like two of us who stuck with it. And yeah, I really liked it.
What's your friend up to now that also stuck with it with you?
He's a doctor, and he practices on a regular basis. He went more into his career than into the into the practice. So when I went to India, he went to college.
Gotcha. So did you went to India right around that time as well?
Yeah, it took a couple of years. For me, it's like I started with my practice when I was 18, 19, something like that. And then the biggest challenge for me was I would go to, we would have this big summer camp, which happened every year for a week. And it was super intense meditation and this, we call it white tantric yoga, which is this 3-day meditation where you sit for 10, 12 hours a day and meditate with a partner in a non-sexual way. But it's this tantric experience, going back and forth between the partner. And so after coming back from this super intense thing, where I went really deep, I was like, okay, I'll stop with the drugs, never drink alcohol again, eat perfectly healthy. And that lasted for about 40 days. And then on day 41, I was like, shit, this was really hard. Maybe I should just smoke a joint. And so then I was back on my old track. And then it took me all the way till the next year to practice again. And then I was able to hold it for 3 months together before I got pulled back by my dear friend group, who I spent a lot of time with. And then, after year 4, I was just like, I'm not doing this again. I'm leaving. So I packed my bags, moved to India.
Okay, gotcha. So I guess what was your daily practice like then versus how has that transformed over the years?
I think the biggest part of the transformation is that I'm not so stuck up about it anymore. When I started to practice, I was like hardcore, like that would mean you wake up at exactly 5 o'clock and then you take a cold shower for exactly 5 minutes and then you meditate for exactly this long, and I would not miss it. And I would do my exact meditations every single day, never miss a day, no matter if I was sick, no matter if, like something else came up, I would just be like, I need to go meditate. And so it was very, very extreme, very left brain approach to meditation, which limited me quite a bit because, I was like, but why is it not working? I'm trying so hard and I'm doing it perfect and I don't move. And so over the years, I really realized how important it is to relax into it and to enjoy it and to have a little smile on your face. And, that nothing comes to an end if you start 30 minutes later than you had planned originally. Yeah. And so now I'm at a point where my daily practice is very real and very authentic. And, it really doesn't matter like what happens because I will end up sitting somewhere meditating for an hour. And so I know that. And on those days when I don't, for whatever, like we have to get up at 2 a.m. to catch a flight, then I don't. And then I take that as an opportunity to say, okay, how do I feel different today that I didn't meditate?
Yeah.
I say, oh, I do feel different. And so it's, I have more of a childlike joy in experimenting with it rather than just, but it has to be done.
or else I'm not going to feel a certain way, or I'm not going to be myself.
Exactly. I took the whole shame and guilt and the judgment and all those heavy emotions out of it. Because I really realized when I felt shame or guilt, it was really hard to feel love and expansion in your meditation. And also by just cutting that out, it actually allowed me to just say, hey, today I got to meditate for 3 minutes while I was in the bathroom, and that's it. And, I'm grateful for it because it was 3 minutes more than nothing.
So you mentioned, I guess, like it's obviously hard to feel, the love and, the joy if you're, have a bunch of shame and guilt that you're trying to pull on yourself. But when you're meditating, I guess, is that your focus on meditating? Or are you simply just trying to be present? Are you, using a mantra, or like, how are you doing that?
In my practice, what I use is one of the Sikh prayers, which is the morning prayer we use as the Sikhs. And I think the reason I like using it is because I've been using it for over 20 years on a daily basis. So it's very familiar for me. It would probably not be something I would recommend to someone who's new to a practice and says, hey, what would you recommend for me to practice? But for me, it's really... just the second I turn on the mantra and I play it, my mind goes into this deep meditative state. And so it's just a tool in the end. And this is a tool which works really well for me. And so, I add little things to it. For example, I like doing this Joe Dispenza meditation for the heart, just because it's nice and I feel nice with it and it feels nice to open my heart. And also I kind of, I like deviating a little bit from my path because, again, my old approach, what I talked about was very much like, this is the way, I only need my kundalini yoga way and everybody else doesn't really know anyway because this is the best way. And so, I came around.
Yeah. Did you, back to, I guess, when you were like really, really young, did you find that you had trouble opening up your heart? Was that something you ever struggled with?
Oh, it's a good question. It was a really fun little experience because when I think back to me being 6, 7, 8 years old, I had this huge, wide open heart, and I just have all these amazing memories and really positive experiences with it. But then I remember when I turned I think it was 10, 11, 12 or something, when I get this thing in my mind where I was like, I need to be a man. I need to be, man, don't cry. I need to be tough. And I mean, then you have your 12-year-old logic on how you become a man. And so I kind of modeled my dad there, and I was like, it seems like shutting down your emotions, never showing any weakness, and definitely not crying is the solution to becoming a man.
Yeah.
So then at 12, I was a man, very like this, and very cool, and nothing fazed me. And unfortunately, it took me 20 years to realize that all the happiness and joy went out the window with it.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was a hard process, and it was hard to realize. And when you realize you've been on the wrong path for 20 years, and you're like, shit, 12-year-old self didn't know all the answers.
Yeah. So when did that actual shift really start to? So you said, I guess 20 years later from when you were 12. So you had already been practicing yoga and you had already been practicing meditation for quite a few years afterwards. So I guess, do you know why that shift then took so long or something like that?
I think on one hand, because I really held on to my armor, I think I liked it. I liked being the tough guy. I like being the one who never cries. I like being the, that solid. It comes with a lot of advantages too.
Well, do you think you actually liked it, or you think it was just your ego trying to convince yourself that you liked it?
No, I think it was my ego. I liked it. No?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like my expression of my persona I played in the world. Was that of the warrior with the big shield and the sword running through the battlefield, smacking people left and right, right? So which is a great thing while you're on the battlefield. But then when you step off the battlefield and you keep doing that, it definitely backfires. And I couldn't, that was the other thing where I realized, hey, you know, I can't just relax, especially like in my relationship with my wife. And, you know, where I realized I always had my armor up. Mm-hmm. I think for me, now that you asked me, I realized that the point where it changed was when my daughter was born, 14 years ago. Because, you know, it was just such a profound and powerful experience that the whole armor thing just went out the window, you know. And then, you know, living with a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, every year was different. And also because she was a girl, it really allowed me to open my heart even more. And that was the beginning of that journey.
Yeah. Do you think that everybody at some point in their life puts that armor up? Like, do you think it's even possible as you're growing up to not put that armor up?
I think putting the armor up is a tool, and it's a good tool. Again, like when you're on the battlefield, I want my armor up and I want my shield because it protects you. Yeah. The problem was not putting the armor up. The problem was putting the armor down. Mm-hmm. When you want to put it down. And I couldn't do that. That was the problem, right? I was so stuck in this behavioral pattern, which I had reestablished over so many years, that when I wanted to be soft and connect to my emotions, I couldn't.
Yeah. Do you think that armor that we, essentially put up, like what's the overarching reason that we have so much trouble like, why do we think we're just constantly on a battlefield?
Well, for me, it was out of fear. Mm-hmm. It was out of fear of really showing who I truly was, who I am, and really showing my essence. And then again, I think the biggest problem there was that I was a teenager. You know, like what do you know with 13, 14, 15, 16? And then, you know, all your teenage friends, I mean, they were all dicks, you know. I was a dick to them in the same way. And so there was really like anytime any of us tried to have a little bit, you know, of that little crack open, it was right away like bam, bam from the rest of the group. And it's like, whoa, what are we doing? Like, we're going to start crying and like that kind of stuff, right? So that was a little bit more prevalent in my generation, I think. That I think we all kept reinforcing each other's, shitty behaviors.
Yeah, weaknesses, their perceived weaknesses, really. So with having a 14-year-old daughter right now and knowing that she's at that age where this is where you started to, you know, put that armor up and have trouble being vulnerable. How do you guide her through that?
It's really hard because she is doing exactly this right now, you know, because that's how it is with us humans. Our children repeat our stories, and then hopefully they get out of them a little earlier than, you know, it won't take them 20 years. And so what I found what helps her the most is when I model behavior, you know, like when I say like, look, I'm feeling this, I'm going through this process right now. Yeah, look, I got my armor up, and look, I'm able to put it down right now. Those kinds of things, you know. And the less I say, the better. It's really more the modeling that works.
I'm gonna assume no, but I mean, did your parents ever, you know, explain their emotions to you or show, you know, why they were?
No, it was not a big thing. I mean, it really. Both my parents were from that after-war generation in Germany. Yeah. And it was a tough time. It was not a time where you could connect to your emotions. It was not a time to cry. It was not a time to feel sorry for your situation. It was a time to be like, hey, work 14-hour days and don't complain, and let's just do this for 10, 20 years and then we'll be okay and we have money. So it was more this, you know, this really hard way, and also from their parents, you know, from my grandparents, very tough and hard-working people who accomplished a lot through their hard work and through their toughness, but also like emotions was never a theme in our house. Yeah. I think that's why I got so attracted to my Mexican wife, who I married, because it was all about emotions. And
Yeah.
I mean, even
It was
today,
so
20
different.
years later, yeah, I mean, I'm still struggling, because it's a lot of emotion. But that was really my attraction, to say like, wow, this is how other people can live.
Yeah, just knowing that there was that different way of living, it not having to be so narrow-minded.
Yeah, and also not having it be a weakness, but actually having it be a strength, to have that connection to, being whatever, emotional in whatever aspect, right? Being, even showing your aggression or yelling and screaming or being very kind or whatever it is, right? To have this very human experience, because we're like, as human beings, that's what it's all about, is to have the ability to feel these emotions. And so pushing this away definitely turns us more into robots or some other alien race which does not connect with emotions.
Yeah, I was having this a conversation with my friend literally yesterday. We were on a pretty long car ride, and we were talking about basically like, what is the point of human existence, which is, a very existential philosophical question that I don't think there's any real answer. But I was, through my experiences over the last year, really 3 months, it's just feeling every emotion that we have. Like that's really, I think, what the only point is not shutting that out. And we're kind of these spirits that are put into these bodies, and we want to be put into these bodies so we can have that human experience. And part of that human experience is feeling the sadness and feeling the joy and feeling the love and feeling the depression and feeling pain. But it's feeling those things fully and not shutting yourself off to them. But it's obviously a lot easier said than done. And that's where meditation helps me a lot, is come back into my body to feel whatever's coming up. I mean, half the time when I'm meditating in the morning now, I'll just start crying just because there's some tough emotions that I've been repressing since I was a kid, and I'm finally opened up to them, and they're all just kind of at the surface now, and I need to just let them out.
That's amazing. Beautiful.
So you currently work as a life coach, correct?
And that's correct, yeah. Okay.
So what is your goal with your clients, I guess, working as a life coach? I guess first, what exactly is a life coach?
For me, best explanation is really like any professional athlete has a coach. We have the World Cup right now, all the teams got a coach. And the reason they have a coach is because it's a person who can look at what's going on from the outside, give feedback, and say, hey, if you change this and change that and do it a little bit different, you can reach your goal. Like this is always the thing, like in my coaching, people don't reach my goals. Like if you sign up with me as a client, it's not like, hey, Amrit Singh had all these great ideas for me and so I'm going to have to do it. No, it's really about is where do you want to get to? And when you have that clarity to where you want to get to, and you understand why you want to get there, that's where having an accountability partner really improves the speed that you travel there. And so that's really what a life coach does, just to have someone to do the same work, which might be able to do, you might be able to do it alone, but takes you 2 years, you can do in 2 months if you have someone who's just in your corner.
Got it. What inspired you to start working as a life coach?
I've been coaching people all my life. I just didn't know that I was coaching people, but I always, like at my work, I always had my colleagues in my office, and we were talking things through, and there was always this thing. So when I learned about the life coaching, I was like, oh my God, this is something you can actually do for work. And then when I got my first coach myself, I realized how much it changed my life in such a quick time. Mm-hmm. And that was it. I was all in, for me, like I could do this all day long, not being paid. And that's usually a good sign for whatever work.
Like you simply just enjoy doing it. What did you work as before you started doing life coaching full time?
When I was in India, I worked at a school. It was an international boarding school where I also taught kundalini yoga, but I very quickly ended up doing the administrations just because my, left brain Germanness kind of lends itself to that. Yeah. So I got all organized and everybody was like, hey, you're really good at that. You should keep doing that. So I ended up being in charge of all of that. But in the end, it was always work, right? And so I really wanted to find my path and I wanted to find my passion. And the coaching really does that.
Okay. Gotcha. So I guess when you first start working with a client, what does that call look like? Is it figuring out their goals? Is it creating that path originally? What do you, I guess, recommend to somebody that might be thinking about working with a life coach that might not really know if it's for them?
Well, first of all, what I found is it's really for everybody. Mm-hmm. But most people, have some reasons or excuses or whatever. They don't want to do the work at this point. Yeah. That's okay. Like where you can say like, look, I'm on overwhelm. I can't even think about myself right now. I'm going to take care of my kids and my mom and whatever, like that's fine too. But when you come to the point, like in the first meeting, we usually explore what your goals are. And then the second part is if those are really your goals, because some people might say, I want $1 million and a Ferrari and a big house. And then after like half an hour, we're like, is that really what you want? And they're like, no, I just want to be happy. And it's like, dude. Okay, good point. So let's figure out what makes you happy. And if it's the Ferrari, which makes you happy, then, okay, let's make a plan how you can, make the money to buy your Ferrari because, step one to happiness, have a Ferrari, check. It's different for everybody, right?
Yeah.
But really what I do is I explore with people what their true motivations are. Mm-hmm. Because then from that first initial meeting onwards, we always come back to, hey, do you really enjoy working 60-hour weeks because that Ferrari is so important? Or do you want to be out in the forest walking around with your dog?
Yeah.
So those kinds of things get clear. And so my job is to be the mirror and to help people get out of their own way.
Yeah. How often do you think it comes back to whatever people's goals are not really their goals? Their only goal is actually to just like be happy or feel love.
Oh, it's every single time. Yeah. I mean, I haven't started with a client yet who said, hey, I want to feel happy and be loved as the first thing on their list, right? Uh-huh. And also it has a little bit to do with trust too, right? I mean,
of course,
it's much more appropriate to say, oh, I want to do well in my career or I want to be a doctor or whatever, right? But when it comes to this point of love, there's always so much energy and so much expansion and so much realness in that moment that people go like, damn, it's really what I want. Okay, how are we going to get this? And then we take it back into the real life situation and say like, hey, what's important for my happiness is to be able to pay for a nice house where my family can live in a beautiful environment. Mm-hmm. That's how I define happiness. And then we say, okay, and how do we get there? Then, okay, we need to make the money. You need to have these things figured out because there's not many of us who say, oh, happiness is living on the mountaintop, sitting in a cave, meditating all day. Mm-hmm. That also works, but I don't have many of those.
What does happiness look like to you specifically?
That's a big one. To me, happiness is really being able to provide for my family, and be able to create an environment where they can grow and expand, especially for my children. I think that's really important. For me, happiness for myself is to just become that little bit more authentic every day, and to work on that and to really to connect more with myself deeply. Because what I find is it's very easy to connect at that deep level with myself when I sit on my mat and meditate. But, when you're out in traffic driving and someone cuts you off and you just want to yell like, yeah, asshole, like to hold that level of happiness then is definitely the higher form of meditation. And I would say as the third last thing, what's really gives me a lot of happiness is to be able to serve others.
Yeah.
And to see spiritual growth in others through, my involvement and my investment of time with them.
Most of your clients, when they come to you, do you think that they already are happy, or do you think that most them, and not even necessarily clients, but even just people in general, do you think people generally are happy, or do you think most people are sort of living in this unhappiness and guard up on the battlefield most of the time?
Yeah, probably more of that. I think most people, especially when they feel a little bit off, and when they know, hey, I need some help to recalibrate, and they become clients, that's usually at a point where they say, like, I know now that I want something else than what I'm feeling every day. Yeah. And so to have this is the first epiphany to have. Because also I got a lot of people who I do the first meeting with, and by the end they are like, yeah, but I don't want to change anything. It's good. That's fine too. Like, who am I to decide if that's the right time for them?
For somebody else's fit. You can only guide them so far. You can't make somebody go through these changes totally. and do things.
Or learn that the hard way too over the years. So, like, it really helps to like grow a little older on this planet, because you got to make many mistakes and fall flat on your face many times. It's like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore, hopefully.
Yeah. Do you find that you're better equipped now to at least handle the mistakes and go through it, or do they still bother you when you make a mistake like that?
I'm better equipped to be kind with myself when I make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And also a newer thing for me is to push myself more out of my comfort zone and to do things which can invite mistakes, right? Mm-hmm. Like, for example, I've been making a point to go more on social media and to put more content in social media and have thousands of people watch you. That's like it's a big one. If you make a mistake or say something wrong, and then, you get that reflection right back in your face. But I realized it's for me a way of growth. It's for me a way of challenging my things I am uncomfortable with. And at the same time, it's also, if I can serve one person with a video I posted on social media, it was all worth it.
Yeah. So besides yoga and besides meditation, I guess, are there other consistent things you think that people can be doing to support their well-being?
Yeah, I think diet is a big one.
Okay.
Because depending on how you eat, it really affects your well-being. And there's many different paths. I wouldn't even go as far as recommend one single diet for everybody, because I think it's so different. Then, you really need to be clear about that. But that would be something worth investigating to find out is what foods make me feel good 3 hours after I eat them, and not just in the second I eat them, and what foods don't. And then cut the crap which doesn't make you feel good and eat more of the stuff which makes you feel good. And yeah, that's a big one. Second biggest one, or actually probably would put that in front of the diet, is sleep. Mm-hmm. If you don't know how to sleep right, damn, life is hard. And it becomes this normal where, I meet people who haven't slept proper for 40 years.
Yeah.
Where you're like, really, how do you live? How do you do this? You can't sleep. That's how important sleep is. I would say, forget about diet, forget about meditation, focus on sleep if you just do one thing.
Okay. So that's what somebody can walk away from this. And if they're feeling like shit all the time, if they're like, am I sleeping? And the answer is no, then they can start there.
Start there, exactly. And find out what are the things which don't allow me to sleep well, what helps me to sleep better, what routines help me to sleep better, what things I do make my sleeping worse. And the thing is, most of us have all the answers. You don't need the sleep expert, and you don't need a $10,000 consultation from someone who's been doing this for 30 years. You know your own answers. You just have to make it a priority and honor yourself at that deep way and set your intention.
Yeah.
And amazing things happen.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that we have all of the answers to everything that we want to do and achieve in life. It's just from whatever has happened in our past, we then put up the blockers and the barricades and make it really, really hard for us to find the answers. But they're always somewhere within ourselves.
100%. Oh, and we put up those blocks ourselves so that these answers finally stop slapping us in the face. You know, that's how it is with intuition. When you're a kid, you have really powerful intuition. But you get all these inputs that it's hard to separate things. It's like, oh, what's my ego? What's my intuition? What's the difference? And what's my fear? What's my insecurities? And so when you get older, what happens is the real things get pushed in your face. And these answers to all these questions get pushed in your face until the point comes where we ourselves make the choice to say, hey, I don't want to hear it anymore. Shut up. Enough of that. I know I'm supposed to eat healthy, but I don't want to hear it anymore. You know, like just that simple thing. I mean, we all know we'll feel better if we eat healthy. But the second we're grabbing that candy bar, or the second we're grabbing that Coca-Cola can, and we know it's not the right thing, we're just like, whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Which also works. At least you don't feel guilty then. That's a big advantage.
As long as once you're processing it, it doesn't turn into the shame and guilt. I think that's probably step one. But
step one for sure.
Why do you think we're so resistant to those inherently clear answers that we know are correct, yet don't want to listen to?
Because shit gets real.
Yeah.
You know, suddenly you can't sit around and watch Netflix all day. Suddenly you can't just get stoned and you know, sit on the side of the path and just see like, I'm just sitting in the sun relaxing, you know. Suddenly you can't do stupid relationships anymore and you need to make some tough decisions and, you know, like take some heavy consequences in your life. Suddenly you can't do your job anymore because it doesn't connect. And it's tough. It's scary. It's really scary to listen to yourself. You know, it's like one of the biggest fears actually is the fear to be great.
Yeah. Why do you think we're so afraid of that greatness? Like reaching our full potential? Why do we hold ourselves back? Because that's something that I've definitely experienced and I've very recently sort of like kind of meditated on, is realizing that there's some part of me that I don't know why, I don't know where, but like I can tell it's trying to hold me back from, you know, getting out of this life that I've created for myself that I've already figured out. I don't necessarily love every part of it, but yet I'm still resistant to want to change for some. Is it just comfort?
It's a tricky one. And I'm resisting to answer why it is for everybody like this. I can tell you why it's for myself like that.
Okay. Yeah.
For myself, it's fear. It's a trust situation. It's really like, okay, you know, it's a little bit like standing on the edge of that cliff and you know you can jump because you're going to fly.
Yeah.
But you're like, every fiber in your being says like, I'm not jumping off that fucking cliff. I'm going to die. It's going to be the end of everything. It's going to be so bad. And so, and then really start feeling comfortable in this thinking process of, see, I was right. Yeah. See, that person who jumped never came back and whatever, you know, like whatever your mind starts making up and comes up with these excuses of why it's okay to stay small.
Yeah.
And it's a process. It's also for me, it's like that slowly, little bit, just pushing out of your comfort zone a little bit every single day.
Yeah.
And just growing that little bit more and doing something new, what you have been uncomfortable doing in the past. You know, like one of the big ones which holds us back is to say, oh yeah, I'm not that kind of person. You know, I'm not a tech person. Oh, I'm not, I just don't dance. No?
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff where you're like,
tiny little things. No. Yeah. Small things that you can be like, wait, like I can just change that at any given moment. There's nothing keeping me from doing this.
Dance.
Yeah.
Sure, I look shitty because I never practice, but who cares? You know, like that's their problem. That they can.
Yeah. You don't have to be good, but you know, as long as you try and push yourself out of your comfort zone, I think, yeah, that creates that happiness. It's just so weird to me that staying in that little cocoon of comfort, like we perceive it as comfort, yet it causes so much tension inside of us and like causes us to not feel happy and get into those depressive
But it's not
states.
directly connected. That's the issue, right? If it would be like, I touch the flame of the candle, oh, I burn my hand, I don't do it again. But if I touch the flame of the candle and then 5 hours later my hand hurts, I'm like, ooh, my hand really hurts today. You know, like I don't connect the two.
Yeah.
And so this is really this to just, and that's where, again, having a coach or having a guide or having someone in your corner really helps, because that person can just help you put the mirror up and say like, hey, look, you're doing this. You told me you feel like this when you do that. Do you want to keep doing this?
Yeah.
And then usually people say, no, I don't. It's like, okay, your call, not my idea.
You're like, okay, you know, interesting, but let's roll with it.
Yeah.
So what would be
it's fun.
What would be your kind of piece of advice to somebody that's just starting on their spiritual path, or just starting to kind of wake up to the habits that they want to start changing right now, of like, where should they start besides sleep?
My recommendation would be kind to yourself, and take it slowly. Don't do what I did, you know, where you just become this really dogmatic, really hardcore
Rigid
person, rigid, and because it doesn't help, you know, you're going to have to rewind it all later anyway. And just practice listening to your intuition, and practice knowing the difference with, hey, this is my ego who wants this. This is me making this choice out of fear, and I'm calling it intuition because it sounds much better than saying I'm afraid to walk down this dark path through the forest, and my intuition tells me that we shouldn't walk this path, right? It's like, no, that's your fear.
Yeah.
Recognize the difference. And then just play with it. And especially the younger people are, the easier it tends to play with their intuition. Yeah. Like a lot of people I talk to who are below 20, 25, they know all the answers. And it's like, practice that. Practice knowing. And I think that's like, for example, one of the things which is amazing about plant medicine and psychedelics. When you're in that space, it's so easy to tell the difference.
Yeah.
You know, suddenly like that fear cannot just be like, you know, you're afraid of something. Okay, but it's fear. But you can tell the difference. And the second you know the difference, you know that it serves you when you sit and you meditate for 20 minutes. You know that when you choose the salad over, you know, the big loaf of bread, you'll feel better later. Yeah. It's there. You don't have to make excuses.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely. Like one of the quotes I always liked is, excuses are self-abuses. So at least know when you abuse yourself with a dumb excuse why you're doing what you're doing. But know. And then don't feel shame and guilt. Feel a lot of love and a lot of kindness, and do better the next day.
Yeah, but don't live in denial.
And don't live in denial. No, that's how the whole world functions. The world functions in denial, because that's the only reason why things are the way they are.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'm going to link to Amrit's website in the footnotes. So if you want to check him out and get a free 30-minute consultation call for life coaching, I would highly recommend it. That's going to be at the link in the footnotes. And if you enjoyed this, please rate us on whatever platform you're using to listen to this. Having as many reviews as possible is always helpful, and share it with a friend, and tune in next week.